everyone, and welcome to Gym Challenge Sunday for our third Los Angeles Premier Challenge and the first of this weekend's doubleheader. I'm joined with Giovanni Costa,
who had a bye,
who will not be joining me for the rest of it, but it was so kind to step in for this round. For this round, what we got Erik Holmstrom, fresh off of a top 64 finish at Fresno, and Aaron Brok, fresh off of I do not know what he got at Fresno.
I think he might have gotten I think he got CP as well from it.
We're going to assume everyone here got top 64. No better, no worse. What we have today is we have a New Balance mirror. So both players are going to be running Chi-Yu, Gyarados, Amoonguss, Iron Hands, Fluttermane, and Tinglu, but they have a couple of slight differences.
Yeah, every Pokemon has a different item and different, more or less, different moveset by 1 or 2. Interesting enough, Aaron Brok only has 1 Protect on his entire team, while Erik has 3. So Erik has a little bit more maneuverability, where Aaron is a lot of very offensive, very just overwhelm him as fast as possible.
Right, and also in addition to that, you also see that with the Chi-Yu sets too. I think is the big thing, where you got the Specs Chi-Yu on Aaron's end, which is really designed to blow things up as quickly as possible, versus the much slower paced Nasty Plot Chi-Yu. So we're talking about probably around half the immediate damage output, but if you're able to set it up, you can get in a good position. Whereas Aaron's probably going to be trying to focus on setting up his Iron Hands, as he is the Safety Goggles Terra Fire set, as opposed to Erik's Assault Vest Terra Grass set.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see, even though these are the exact same 6 Pokemon, they're played completely different, right? Where Erik has a little bit more maneuverability, where he can switch around, protect, where Aaron if he can get that offensive going and overwhelm Erik, he won't be able to do anything. But at the same time, if Erik gets a better lead against Aaron, it's going to be really hard for him to maneuver around that, because there's no protect.
Yeah, I think that one thing that this matchup's going to come down to is the fact that Aaron does have that Rocky helmet on his Amoonguss. A lot of these New Balance mirrors tend to come down to Iron Hands Amoonguss versus Iron Hand Amoonguss stalemates. Rocky helmet is normally a worse item, right? You're not taking that many hits. Citrus Berry is really good for recovery, but specifically in this mirror, it's generally been developed that the best way to play is to focus down Amoonguss, burn it as quickly as possible. If you're throwing those drain punches on the Amoonguss,
you're losing health instead of gaining. Although Erik does have Heavy Slam on his Iron Hands, which does do a lot of damage to Amoonguss. So we're gonna get started here with game 1 of the round 1 here at the Gym Challenge. Technically Saturday. So we'll see how both these players adapt. They're both great players. Aaron, I played him multiple times, and he's just fantastic, as well as Erik, so I'm very excited to see how this plays out.
I see the Fluttermane Gyarados versus the Gyarados and Iron Hands, so already starting off with a bit of difference, both players recognizing that because these teams are very physically oriented, not very, it's 3 physical attackers versus 2 special, both of them are really opting for the Gyarados.
Yeah, I think it's interesting here that both Gyarados are threatened by each other's Pokemon, where Iron Hands can go for a Thunder Punch, or a Thunder Punch, and the Fluttermane can go for a Thunderbolt here. So, but Erik did get the Intimidate off into his Iron Hands, so it's a little bit less threatening right now. So
yeah, and I think what Aaron is really trying to do is make a decision of when is he going to go in with the Iron Hands and try to set that up, right? Because now is the situation where normally you'd want to Terra Fire because you see the Fluttermane, but you don't want to eat a Waterfall.
Yeah.
Maybe he decides that now is okay because the Gyarados is intimidated, but we've seen that committing your Terra early means that your opponent can switch around and punish that.
Yeah, exactly. It's always interesting to see how players adapt to whether or not to use the Terra early. It's kind of like using Dynamax early or not, or saving it for later. So we're going to see here that both Gyarados are going to switch out for the Iron Hands and the Amoonguss for Aaron. So it'll be interesting to see what Aaron goes for here. He might have, I believe he went for Thunder Punch onto the Iron Hands, which will do negligible damage here.
Yeah, I think that it's just a matter of Erik is just playing the position how it's supposed to be, right? You don't care necessarily if the Iron Hands gets a Sword Stance up here, because you can switch the Gyarados back in later. You can get it back to neutral, and then you can hit it with a Waterfall. Yeah,
and Dazzling here is not going to do a whole lot of damage to either Pokemon, but neither will this Thunder Punch. So overall, I think Erik also has to switch out here, because his Fluttermane's really not going to be doing much. And I'm assuming that Fake Out would go into the Amoonguss in order to prevent a Spore from going off. Also interesting that Aaron did burn his Terra really early here, so from the rest of the game, that Iron Hands is going to be a Fire type.
Yeah, I think Erik is in a fantastic position here, because now that the Iron Hands has committed Terra, you know that you can line up the Gyarados into it, and you can have that favorable matchup. Additionally, the Amoonguss really isn't threatening getting off a Spore here, because Erik can either go for the fake out, or he can commit his Terra Grass and switch into probably his own Amoonguss and not care about it.
Exactly. So Fluttermane is going to switch out here, and we're going to see what Erik decides to bring out. And it is going to be his Gyarados, which does have the Lum Berry. So even if he gets a Sport here, it's not going to do anything. And I'm going to guess the Iron Hands is going to go for Terra Grass. Oh no, actually it's not going to Terra Grass. So it could be potentially fall to Spore here.
Yeah, I mean, that's Erik going for like a smart, aggressive read there, because it's just so hard to click Spore into that Terra Grass because you don't want to waste it. And Aaron probably figured that the Amoonguss is either getting faked out or it's committing the Terra Grass on Iron Hands. It probably wanted to burn the Lum on the Gyarados. Erik knew that and was really able to capitalize on it. And now it's just like, Aaron has to get out of this situation, because if it stays like this and he doesn't do something drastic, Erik is going to slowly whittle him down. He's already burned so many resources.
Yeah, but I will say one thing that's interesting here is that Amoonguss can just redirect anything this Gyarados can do, and the Iron Hands, really. And Iron Hands could technically start setting up here, potentially, or maybe even go for the Thunder Punch into this Gyarados. Since we've seen that it has Flutter Mane in the back, it's still going to take quite a bit of damage from a Thunder Punch, but we're going to see the Amoonguss is going to switch out here, so it's going to leave this Iron Hands potentially very vulnerable to a Waterfall. But here comes an Intimidate again into this Gyarados and this Iron Hands, which will be doing a lot more than it did last time.
Yeah, I really like the switch from Aaron. I think it's what you need to do in order to make progress in the position, and you force Erik to have to make the call. And if he goes for something like a taunt into the Amoonguss trying to play it safe, right, you can just win off of that.
Exactly. And we're going to see that the Gyarados is going to be the one that Terras here into the Terra Fairy, which has been becoming very popular in the last few weeks. So Thunder Punch is not going to do that much, and Drain Punch is going to do pretty much nothing. So here comes the taunt.
I like that a lot, because Erik's kind of recognizing that how he's going to win the game is by trying to maximize Gyarados' amount of time it's staring down that Iron Hands, right, and threatening it with that Waterfall. And so making it so that you're never worried about actually fainting is just going to make it so that that interaction is a lot more painful. I think that's a smart use of Terra from Erik's end.
Yeah, and Aaron did go for that Swords Dance, so that Iron Hands is now back in neutral. And both of Erik's Iron Hands and Gyarados are -1. So Gyarados, even though it can go for a Waterfall, it's not really going to do much because Iron Hands does have quite a bit of defense, and a -1 is, you know, not going to do much.
Right, and also it's something to be said about, like, Aaron can always detect and switch back into a Amoonguss, right, and really just try to slow play it, and it kind of puts the onus on Erik to have to call a switch at some point in order to, like, break up Aaron's switch synergy. I think that what I would like to see from Erik's end is trying to get out that Iron Hands, because it's eating these Intimidates, it's not doing that much damage, and I think that he can be bringing more valuable Pokemon onto the field.
Yeah, the thing I think Erik right now is putting not a whole lot of pressure onto Aaron, so Aaron can consistently be switching out, is not really getting punished for either one, and even if this Amoonguss gets taunted right now, for example, he can just Pollen Puff the Iron Hands, and he can consistently be setting up.
Yeah, what's kind of funny is in a lot of matchups, Taunt on Amoonguss is a death sentence. In this matchup, you don't care. It was just like going to heal anyways. We do see the Waterfall instead of the Taunt. I do like that a lot.
Yeah, and the Thunder Punch does about 35% to this Gyarados, and both Pokemon took about the same amount of damage, but here's the thing. Amoonguss can just bring everything back to normal, and this Flutter Mane, even though it's choice specs, a Shadow Ball is not going to pick up a one-hit KO, and the Gyarados has no threat to this Amoonguss whatsoever.
No, but what it does do is it puts pressure on, it's threatening the double target onto the Iron Hands. It's making Aaron think twice about whether he needs to Rage Powder here. It's making him think, oh, do I want to go for a Detect Spore, or do I risk the Taunt? And what Erik is doing is, yeah, nothing is guaranteed here, but he's the one in the driver's seat and forcing Aaron to make an uncomfortable decision where if he guesses wrong, he can lose the game on the spot off of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is riding onto this Iron Hands, whether or not it can like live it long enough to do the damage it needs to do. And yeah, you're right, he has to go for the Rage Powder because the Shadow Ball plus Waterfall would be the death sentence for it. And we're going to see here a Shadow Ball going into this Amoonguss. It should be doing about 55 to 60%. Yep, and and since it's Rocky Helmet, is not going to activate the Citrus Berry and the Taunt. So now Erik is actually in a really good spot because like there's Amoonguss can't redirect anymore, and a Waterfall plus shot. Ooh,
that is unfortunate.
That just changed a little bit of everything, but I think Flutter Mane should still be faster. It should
still be faster this turn, but it does mean that the Gyarados or the Chi-Yu can pick it up later. So that means that from Erik's end of things, you got to get value out of the Flutter Mane right now. You don't care if it dies because it's not going to be useful in the cleanup. So now this turn from Erik comes down to, you think that Aaron is going to like detect and switch and try to punish the switch, or do you want to double into the Iron Hands? This is a spot where Erik, if he calls this correctly, can just win the game on the spot.
Exactly, and that's the thing about not having Protect on your team is like you know that the Amoonguss has to take another Shadow Ball, or anything that switches into that slot will take a Shadow Ball no matter what. So it'd be interesting to see if Erik can capitalize on the lack of Protects from Aaron here.
And something that we haven't seen from Erik is we actually haven't seen his 4th Pokemon, right?
Yep. Oh no, I think have we seen the Among Us or no?
I don't.
Okay. No, because it's highlighted on the screen, so I thought it was. But here comes the Gyarados from Aaron, so it's probably going to take a Shadow Ball, or maybe Flutter Mane will just try and Shadow Ball this Iron Hands, which would do a ton of damage to this Iron Hands.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing too is because Eric's Iron Hands hasn't taken that much damage, right? It means that the Chi-Yu endgame is really going to be hard from Aaron, because it's just going to be difficult to get a lot of value out of Chi-Yu when you still have to stare down that full health Iron Hands. And so because of that, Erik does need to preserve the Iron Hands, right? But he can get guaranteed value out of it. And if they play it with like the Pokemon that they have been playing with, right? Like the Gyarados into everything, that's going to come down to a favorable endgame for Erik, I think.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is because of that paralyzed now, it forces Erik to have to fake out this Gyarados, otherwise the Waterfall will easily pick up a knockout here. And
yeah, and the thing is, Aaron doesn't have Protect on Gyarados. He's running Helping Hand on it, but this is the situation where you get punished for it, because if you don't get full parry, that's a lot of damage just guaranteed into that slot.
Yeah, so Erik has been putting himself in a really good position here, but that Gyarados is going to switch out for a different Pokemon, which is probably going to be the Among Us, which is a very good switch. And we're going to be able to see if this Flutter Mane will be able to move at all or not. And Erik is also going to switch out probably into that Gyarados if I had to make a guess. So that Gyarados is putting in so much work right now. The shuffling of it intimidates. It really preventing this Iron Hands from really doing anything right now. And we'll be able to see whether or not this Flutter Mane does get a move off, and it does. A Shadow Ball from a Spec Flutter Mane should be doing a ton of damage. Not enough for a knockout though.
Yeah, but what that does do is it means that any stray hit is going to be enough to knock out that Iron Hands, and the Flutter Mane does go down, but with its paralyzed, it did its job. It made it so that the Among Us is never going to be able to heal up the Iron Hand.
Yeah, so and this is the tough situation that I think Aaron finds himself in, that his Among Us can't protect, so it would easily get taunted here. And even if Aaron switches in his Gyarados to get Intimidate off, then Waterfall still going to be very, very deadly here.
Yeah, because while Aaron got the KO, what Erik got in return is he made the Iron Hand sweep basically impossible.
Yeah.
Iron Hands is not going to be able to be at full health anymore because it's not going to be able to take a hit for Among Us to be able to Pollen Puff it. It doesn't have that space anymore, and the Iron Hands is just so important in this matchup.
It is. I think once whoever loses their Iron Hands is going to be a very difficult hill to climb back from.
Yeah, because we've seen that Aaron is just constantly shuffling in his Among Us and his Gyarados, Among Us and Gyarados. But the thing is like once the Iron Hand goes down, you don't really want to be doing that next to a Specs U because the Specs U is so easy to pick off at that point.
Yeah, and here comes another Intimidate from Aaron's Gyarados, switching out his Iron Hands. Obviously, he sees the value on the Iron Hands, but Waterfall not going to do a whole lot to this other Gyarados, and we get and a Wild Charge. Ooh, he went for the read, but now it's going to get heavily punished for that because the Spore is most definitely coming out here.
Yeah, and then the thing is that he already burned the Terra onto the Gyarados, so the Spore onto the Iron Hands is free. Erik was trying to punish the switch. He thought he had him, but Aaron was able to just keep his cool and just reset the position. And now that's
it gets really interesting because do you predict the side Pollen Puff, and you can I think Aaron put himself in a very good position here where this Among Us is not really threatened. You can't taunt Pollen Puff, and the Gyarados on the other slot, it doesn't threaten anybody here right now.
Yeah, if I'm Erik, I do not care that I am waterfalling for not very effective. I am waterfalling 20 times into the Gyarados until it switches into the Iron Hands because you can't let it get healed up. But Erik is able to keep a cool head, get the taunt off onto it.
Yeah, no waterfall onto this Iron Hands can do negligible damage, but any damage into Iron Hands is good damage. And we're going to see that Iron Hands is going to take its first turn of Mandatory Sleep, and Pollen Puff is going to bring this Gyarados right back to full HP. So Aaron put himself in a very, very good position here where he's not threatened. He can consistently Pollen Puff. The Rocky Helmet is really helping him because the Waterfall, Aaron doesn't care about the Waterfall into the Among Us. He's doing more damage than he's losing here, and it'd be interesting to see how Erik is going to be able to rotate around this Pokemon in order to do something about it, because I think once this Gyarados goes down, I think the Chi-Yu in the back could be very deadly.
Yeah, and now that the Iron Hands is whittled down and asleep, just create room for the Chi-Yu potentially just the game on the spot.
Yeah, and we're gonna see a Thunder Wave going into this Iron Hand, so it's gonna reduce the chance that they'll be able to move at all. But here's the thing, though: now the Iron Hand is gonna be able to get healed by that Pollen Puff. Oh, but Eric's Iron Hand does wake up with a one-turn sleep.
He needs this to KO. He needs
Ooh, so close, but no. It's 3 HP, and now it's gonna be back to more than half of his health. Very good turn for Aaron here, getting most of his health back. And again, Amoonguss is just running amok. It just can't. It's not threatened by anything here. And sure, you paralyze the Iron Hands here, but the problem is that the Mungus is like being able to just do so much work here for Aaron, and while Erik doesn't have like this, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how Erik can climb back from this.
All the progress that Erik is making and is kind of getting whittled down by Aaron being able to consistently get heals up and find spots where the pollen pops up. So even though he was in a strong position, Aaron was able to take all the momentum.
Ooh, but the full para here from Iron Hands could be huge if he can get to Waterfall. And Waterfall does connect into this. Iron Hands not going to be able to pick up a knockout here, but it will do a lot of damage. So another Waterfall will easily pick up a knockout here.
The Pollen Puff going into the Amoonguss instead.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you were trying to go for the detect, right? Like you can't Pollen Puff yourself there. But it's just like that full para.
Ooh, one more thing though, Aaron is actually running really low on his time here. Actually, this could be a win condition for Erik here to just stall out the game.
You're right.
Because he only has 48 seconds. He really has to start moving really fast and start picking up knockouts. Because like, if I'm Erik here, I'm like just gonna like trying to whittle down the Aaron's time as much as possible. So Aaron really needs to like pick his move fast and make something happen, because otherwise he's gonna lose here.
But he still has Pokemon and so much bulk to deal with. It's like he has to make his moves fast. But you're against an Amoonguss that can Pollen Puff a Gyarados and an Iron Hands. That's so difficult.
Yeah, taunt into this Chew, not gonna do anything since it's choice specs, and Pollen Puff onto this Gyarados gonna bring it back to full HP. So let's see if this Iron Hand is able to get a move off at all. And it does get a Thunder Punch, which will do about the same amount of damage it was at before. No para here, but here's the scary thing is that, again, this Chew is now actually like primed to do a ton of work for
oh yeah, it's able to fire off that Heat Wave for free basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that this was the big issue with Erik's game, is that he brought the Amoonguss, but he wasn't able to get Amoonguss in any of the neutral interactions. It just wasn't doing anything for him. He always had the Gyarados and the Iron Hands out there without the Amoonguss.
Ooh, I don't agree with this play from Erik. That just letting his Amoonguss go down like this, like he
doesn't have another option.
Yeah,
it's not going to be useful. Oh no!
And Waterfall does pick up the knockout onto this Iron Hands here, but here's the issue: is that Chiyu is like a massive problem. But here's the thing though, again, like the time thing is a win con for Erik right now.
Yeah, but it doesn't take that much effort. You go into Amoonguss, you Rage Powder Heat Wave, Heat Wave. Like, it's only going to take seconds per turn to get, but I don't know. This feels so rough for Erik. I think he just was not able to get the same value out of his Amoonguss that Aaron was able to in this game. And I think that, like, if you look at it, I wouldn't be surprised if Erik dealt more damage overall this game, but Aaron was just able to consistently heal it. Whereas Erik got, like, one Pollen pop-up this entire game. Yeah,
and this Gyarados is, again, full HP, so it's going to be nearly impossible to get knocked out unless Erik read into a Thunder Punch there, which would be very impressive. And here we're going to fake out onto this Gyarados, which just switched in, so not useful, and a taunt onto this Amoonguss, which it went for a Pollen Puff, so again, doesn't care. And here comes a Pollen Puff, or Clear Smog, which will be able to knock out this Gyarados. And now it's going to be a 3v1. And all Aaron has to do here is get the Chew into place, and he should be able to win the game pretty convincingly.
Let's see how fast Aaron can press that A button. He's got got some time left.
He got 12. Oh, actually, well, actually, okay.
Drain Punch gets him HP back. Oh
no,
no,
that
Charge isn't gonna do it.
Yeah, and you're just gonna get knocked out by recoil damage. I think Erik here maybe didn't see the potential. He also didn't have a particularly good switch into the Chiyu, but I think maybe that turn where he got Heat Wave, he could have like just let the Amoonguss go down, protect the Gyarados, and been able to do something about it. He could have capitalized on the lack of time that Aaron had there.
Right, that's true, because you didn't use Gyarados to take all that damage, right? Because the Waterfall on the Iron Hands, yeah, it's damage, but you can always get that damage off later because it's paralyzed. Everything is faster than it at that point. And you can also bank on a full pair there, realistically, right? But also, I think that for Erik, the big thing was just getting that value out of the Amoonguss, because it wasn't using Amoonguss in like that mid-game type of thing where it's just going off the Pollen Puffs. He saved it for the end game, and by the time it came there, it just had to
wasn't very useful.
It had to stare down at Chiyu. So I think that for Erik, he's either going to need to get more value out of it, even if it is taunted and just like spam pollen puff, or he's going to need to go with a different Pokemon.
Yeah, I think I didn't really like I don't think Erik used his Amoonguss as well as Aaron did. The Amoonguss came in, got one pollen pop out, and then got destroyed by the heat wave. There was not much use out of it here, where Aaron got a lot of use out of his Amoonguss, and I think that was the I think the Amoonguss, like the way they played the Amoonguss, was the difference maker in this match, or this that first game, where Aaron got a lot out of his Amoonguss, Aaron got nothing out of his, pretty much nothing out of his Amoonguss, and that once that he was able to comfortably bring that Chi-Yu in, it was just very, very threatening.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see like if the players decide to make adjustments here, right? Because I mean, going into this, you know your approach to the balance, right? Like you know, like okay, this is what I want to play. So it becomes so difficult to change it up when things aren't working, because you know this has been blabbed out, it should work, and it's just like you need to play up to it. The thing of like, you make the adjustment that makes the most sense in the moment, or you trust on the previous preparation that you've done. And that's just like a gut call that both players are going to have to make here. But I think the onus is especially on Erik, right? Because Aaron was in some tough spots early on in that game. Remember, like it felt like if Erik was able to punish any of those switches, that Aaron would have just lost on the spot. But because he tried to like punish one and the score went off on the Iron Hands, everything went off the rails.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I said that Aaron's team has less protect, so there's a little bit more difficult to maneuver around, but he maneuvered around Erik so perfectly, almost never getting punished for switching in a Pokemon and switching out. He only had one Pokemon with protect, and yet he was able to always maneuver around Erik. So we're going to see here an adjustment from Erik. He's going to bring in the Chi-Yu in this game too, against the Amoonguss and Iron Hands, so an Intimidate onto this Iron Hands immediately, and this Chi-Yu is putting a lot of pressure onto this Amoonguss to potentially go for a Terra, otherwise it's gonna get knocked out.
I love this adjustment from Erik. It's putting the pressure on, because what he did such a good job of in that first game, right, was getting those situations where he was putting on that initial pressure. But when the game became a lot slower, that's kind of when he fell behind. So Erik's just putting his foot on the gas here and saying like, okay, you're gonna have to respect my nasty plot. You're gonna have to respect the fact that I can just heat wave if I want to. You're gonna have to respect the fact that I can go for that Terra Water if I want to. So it's not like Drain Punch is necessarily safe. So even if
ooh, here comes a nasty plot from this from Erik. Could be a little bit greedy here to go for it and taunt from this Gyarados. It's I think Erik might play a little bit too risky here. Here's comes a Drain Punch onto this Chi-Yu. It's not gonna knock out, but it's gonna do a ton of damage. And here comes a clear Smog. Just so that Chi-Yu took a ton of damage and got nothing for it. And that is that's not a good start if you're Erik. You're like not happy about that.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, I respect that Erik is like putting the foot on the gas, because that's what he's trying to do, right? Like you're doing in this to get pressure, but Aaron is doing a great job of not being phased by it. I think that a lot of your trainers are going to see that situation and they're going to panic, right? They're going to like be scared of the heat wave going off onto the Amoonguss. Aaron is understanding what Erik is really trying to accomplish in the position, which is the nasty plot, go for that immediate sweep, that immediate value, and I just like lane it just a little bit.
Yeah,
for that clear Smog, it just puts Erik in such a tough spot.
It does, and here's the thing: this Iron Hands threatens both Pokemon that's on Erik's side. But here we're gonna be a switch out onto Erik's Amoonguss, so it's gonna bring the Amoonguss much earlier this time, and Amoonguss is gonna switch out for Aaron for that Gyarados, so an Intimidate onto Erik's Gyarados, so it's not gonna be as threatening. And again, this Iron Hands is kind of like not really threatened right now. It has safety goggles. I believe it has safety goggles, so that it ignores the Amoonguss completely. And it can go for a Thunder Punch onto this Gyarados, which is going to go for a Terra Fairy, so it's not going to do as much damage. But if I'm Aaron here, I can click Swords Dance, and I don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that's going to keep you is that Amoonguss is in position. It's going to be clicking Clear Smog. It's not being threatened. The AC is on. It's listening to its favorite music. Like, everything is fine here.
Yep.
One thing that I've noticed this game is Erik has taunted Aaron's Amoonguss a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually blocked a single attack.
No, it really hasn't, and I think that's the interesting thing about how Aaron's playing this. He's been able to maneuver around this Amoonguss perfectly, where it doesn't. He might as well not even be there. Where I feel like Erik's just not getting good value out of his Amoonguss, and like I said, this Iron Hands is a safety goggle, so like it just completely ignores this Amoonguss. It does not care about what this Amoonguss can do.
I think this situation is where Erik can't get value out of it, because you have the threat of Clear Smog. You don't need to click Smog, right? Because Aaron doesn't want to just be Swords Dancing at Clear Smog over and over again. He's going to just attack.
Yeah.
So Erik can use that, go for Pollen Puffs, and just like try to play the neutral a little bit better there. this situation, he might be trying to get a Pollen Pup onto a Chi-Yu.
Ooh, but this is not good for Erik. I think Erik is playing a little bit too risky here, where I think Aaron's capitalizing on it perfectly. Like the Rage Powders, again, I think maybe Erik might have forgotten that this Iron Hands does have the safety goggles, so it's just ignored completely, and just like that, the Chi-Yu did absolutely nothing this game, and this Gyarados is probably going to go for a Thunder Wave onto this Amoonguss, so now it's a lot riskier whether or not it gets to move. And just like that, Erik lost a massive threat, and Aaron has lost almost nothing for it. Like,
yeah, what Erik is going to need to here, right, is go for some serious outplay. And by serious outplay, I mean Waterfall and Thunder Wave.
Yeah.
And it's something interesting there too, right? Like, Aaron also has the taunt on Gyarados, right?
Yeah.
And like that could have been a Spore, but Aaron understands that the threat of taunt means you don't have to necessarily click taunt, because you don't want to just like not get an attack off there. Instead, going for Thunder Wave instead of a taunt means it's kind of a weird situation where the Thunder Wave blocks more moves than the taunt.
It really is, and I think the problem here, Erik has like although Gyarados does have some offense, it's mostly a passive Pokemon where you're there to like waterfall, set up taunts and T-waves, but it's really not putting damage. That's the issue I'm having here. It's like there's no damage coming out of Erik's side whatsoever, and here comes the taunt from Erik's Gyarados onto Aaron's Gyarados, which is going to prevent taunt from happening. So again, the problem here is this okay, now this Amoonguss can just Rage Powder, or it can go for a Spore, and there's really there's nothing that Erik can do about it other than, you know, of course the Erik does have the Lumberry, so he could prevent he can eat that, but it only works once.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to go for the taunt here if you are Erik, right? Because you don't have the Terra Grass on your Iron Hands, and now your goal is really going to be, okay, I'm gonna taunt the Amoonguss, make it not a factor, throw as much damage into that Iron Hand slot as I can. I don't care what Pokemon is in there, and you're just going to try to just throw out damage. You're going to try to like correctly punish switch it. You're behind, just make plays happen. You know, at some point Aaron is going to try to switch Gyarados for one of the slots.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that the Amoonguss went for Clear Smog into Gyarados, though you get a little bit more damage off. You also got rid of the Intimidate that you did to the Gyarados, so you kind of helped Erik in some ways. And Erik correctly identified that the Gyarados was going to switch out for the Iron Hand, so he went for a Drain Punch, which did decent damage, but again, the problem is that nothing stops the Amoonguss from just pressing Pollen Puff. So if I'm Erik here, maybe I'm just going to go for Thunder Wave and pray.
Yeah, Thunder Wave and Prey honestly makes a lot of sense. I mean, what you're threatening, right, is just spamming Waterfall, Drain Punch onto the Iron Hand, right? And Aaron is just trying to like play around that a little bit, going for the Thunder Wave onto the Amoonguss. This could be a difference maker.
Yeah, so now it's going to be, there's a little bit more RNG involved into this game, because like both two Pokemon from Aaron's side is Thunder Wave, so it may not be able to get a move off at all, but...
And what Thunder Wave does for Erik, right, is like, yeah, that blocks like a Clear Smog, right? But what it does is it means that the stalemates aren't so stalemates anymore, because Erik now has inevitability on his side. You can't spam Pollen Puff onto Iron Hands forever and expect things to work out. You remove Swords Hands Pollen Puff from the equation because Aaron doesn't want to risk getting full paired and just losing on the spot.
Exactly, and it'd be interesting to see how when does Aaron decide to bring the Chi-Yu, because that's going to be the Pokemon that's going to pick up the knockouts, and because of this, Gyarados is Terra Fairy, a Heat Wave is going to do a ton of damage to it.
Yeah, you know that Aaron is going to try to be positioned at some point his Gyarados in, because Erik made it so that this is no longer a stalemate position. But then the thing is, it's the onus on Erik to try to punish that switch and find the exact moment. That's so difficult, but that's going to be the only way that he can win this game.
Yeah, and here comes a Waterfall. Oh, critical hit Waterfall onto... Ooh, but the Drain Punch does go off, so it's going to heal quite a bit back for... Oh, not a whole lot, but enough where I believe Drain put it away from Drain Punch KO range. So Drain Punch from... oh, and Wild Charge, so Erik predicting potentially a read into that Gyarados. And let's see if this Amoonguss gets to move at all.
Yeah, no, it's going to come down
It does. So all the damage that Erik did just went right back to... just pretty much came back. It actually did less damage. It healed more than it did damage.
Right, that's probably the plays that Erik has to go for here to try to win this game, right? Like, go for the inevitability with Pollen Puff and just throw damage into that slot and say, like, Erik won that, or was in a good position there if the full pair happened or Aaron switched into either of those Pokemon. And it's just like, Aaron is a little pinned. Like,
yeah, but the one thing again is that and we just saw the move that Aaron go for. He went for Rage Power plus Swords Dance, and that's the advantage of having Swords Dance we're not having, is like you can be constantly setting up where Erik can't. Like, the damage that he's gonna do with his Iron Hands is always the same. So here comes the Amoonguss back on from Erik's side. He's probably gonna taunt that Amoonguss. He does not want to get sporting. Does not want. Oh, never mind. The waterfall here is not very good because you're taking Rocky Helmet damage, but also you allow Aaron to go for a Swords Dance here, and now Aaron is in the driving seat.
I think there what Erik was really hoping for is, I mean, like, we've seen that Aaron has just been going for the attacking with the Amoonguss, right? So probably thinking like a clear smog, or maybe even a full pair or something, right? It's just like Aaron has really been able to bait out Erik's stuff well. Mind you, this is a mirror, right? It's not like Erik has like an inherent disadvantage here.
Exactly.
It's just that Aaron has been playing all these micro situations super well. He's like, Erik is trying to punish these switches. Aaron has been going for switches, but he's been able to time them just when Erik hasn't been able to punish them. And it's just like really been able to weed out.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would say, Erik does have Clear Smog, which cannot be redirected, so that +2 from Swords Dance, if the Amoonguss is able to move, is going to be gone. And Spore onto this Gyarados not gonna work because they went for a Protect, and we're gonna see if the Amoonguss gets to move at all, and it does. So Iron Hand's right back to 0 in the attack, but at the same time, what prevents it from just going for another Swords Dance and Pollen Puff?
Yeah, it's the thing is that what Erik is going to rely on is at some point that Amoonguss to get full parried and for that to bite Aaron in the butt. And it's just like, don't know when, but Erik is just going to have to constantly try to put pressure on so that at some point, some way, he's able to get it. Or even just slow play it and say like, listen, Aaron was really low on time at the end of last game. If you keep forcing him to make these long decisions, go for a long time where you do have to make these difficult decisions, right? Like maybe you just went that way.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, it's that Aaron does have that Pokemon advantage, and one of those Pokemon is a very, very offensive Chi-Yu. So at some point, as soon as like Aaron believes that he can bring that Chi-Yu safely, he can go into high speed and just start with getting knockouts left and right.
Yeah, because we've been at this stalemate position for so long, right? Like, how long has Aaron had the Iron Hands and the Amoonguss out on the field? And it's at the point where, like, Erik needs to call when that switch is happening, but because it hasn't happened, it's just, like, draining more and more and more. And the longer the stalemate goes on, the less likely it seems at any moment that Aaron is going to change it up.
Yeah, and here comes the Gyarados back again for Aaron's side. It's going to get the Intimidate onto the Iron Hands. Not very useful against the Amoonguss unless you want the Clear Smog damage to be a little bit more, but detect here from the Iron Hands, so it's going to prevent from being Clear Smog this turn. And and a correct read from Erik here, predicting that Aaron would go for the Protect here, and now Iron Hands is back to full. Amoonguss can go for that Clear Smog, and he can fake out the Iron Hands to prevent any massive damage from happening.
Right, and I mean, you are threatening the Wild Charge here, but only in part, right? Because Aaron hasn't committed the Terra yet.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. This game has gone on for so long. I think Erik threw out the Terra on like turn 2 or something, and Aaron is just like been waiting and playing it a bit.
Interesting that Erik would go for the Gyarados here, where I believe the Drain Punch is going to do a lot of damage to this. God. And if the problem here is if that Amoonguss got paralyzed, I think the game would have been in Erik's favor. I'm a bit surprised that Erik decided to fake out the Gyarados, where the Iron Hands is definitely the much more threatening slot there.
Yeah, I'm not sure like what that is gonna accomplish here, but it's just hard because Aaron has been in the spot where it's like on turn 1, punish the Chi-Yu, and it felt like Erik's needed to claw back the entire time, and Aaron has just put up a wall that Erik has been trying to break through and just has not been able to get through. And I think at that point, it just makes that like at some point, you're going to make a suboptimal decision.
Yeah, exactly. And here comes Iron Hands is going to switch out. Does not want to get knocked out, because if that Iron Hands gets knocked out, that's pretty much game over. Gyarados going to switch in. It is at full health, so it should not be threatened by anything that Aaron can pull out right now. And we're going to see the Drain Punch going onto the Gyarados. Meaningless damage more or less for now. And we're going to see that Iron Hands is back to full HP. It still has not taken barely any damage. And Clear Smog is going to do a pretty decent chunk there, more than I thought it would. And you're gonna see that the Clear Smog from the Amoonguss, Erik does not want to let that Iron Hands get out of control again.
Yeah. One thing too, right? Like I was saying, like in the beginning of this, that these situations of this like stalemate are generally solved by just focusing down that Amoonguss. but because of that Rocky helmet on the Amoonguss, Erik hasn't been able to do that. He hasn't been able to like go down through the Amoonguss. And the thing is, that Amoonguss hasn't gotten full parried once.
Yeah, I know, right? That's kind of crazy that in all these turns, and as long as this Amoonguss has been the paralyzed, but here comes the Chiyu, which I was saying.
my
Once
God.
Aaron believes that he can bring that Chiyu in, it's gonna be really deadly. Let's see if Erik is able to capitalize on that. Oh no, he won't be able to because of the Rage Powder. But if Erik maybe was able to read that and went for potentially a Spore, oh, this is not looking good for Erik. Waterfall going into this Amoonguss is gonna take.
If you spore that Chiyu, you can punish it that way too. You can work out right.
That's such a hard read to make. I can't.
You can't fault him for that.
Yeah.
And, like, even going for the waterfall there meant that if the full para did happen eventually,
yeah,
it works out. But it's just Aaron's Amoonguss has refused to get full parried, and it's made it seem that like Erik hasn't been able to do anything. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's not that Erik has been playing futilely. It's just that legitimately his best weapon here is get the full para on the Amoonguss and use that to break it. It had inevitability on his side, but inevitability never happened.
Yep, and it's crazy that there hasn't been a single pair from either side yet, and for as long as these Pokemon have been able to move. Let's see if maybe that changes now. If Erik is able to potentially get a Thunder Wave onto this Chiyu, or and then potentially start going for waterfalls, that could change the game. But right now,
He's
Aaron
gonna
is
need a miss.
yeah, Aaron is such in a driver's seat. That Specs Chiyu is so terrifying, right?
Yeah. Aaron played this entire game waiting for the perfect moment to get his Chiyu in,
and that was it.
He did. I mean, the thing is, if the Rage Powder like didn't go off, right, that could have been the difference maker. But the thing is like at the end of the day, it was a 75% chance, and Aaron was very favored there. Heat Wave hits both Pokemon. That's gonna be it.
Yeah, that's no game. Yeah, there's no. Aaron just like, I think Erik played a little bit too fast and furious at the beginning of the game, and losing that Chiyu turn 1 or 2 really ended up costing the game. And we can see why this Rocky Helmet is putting in so much work here, is that Gyarados is constantly losing health, and Aaron has lost not a single Pokemon, I think, either set.
Yeah, and like this game's gone on for so long, but it really was just characterized by that turn 1, right? Like Erik thought like, okay, I'm going to put pressure on now. And I mean, the thing is, when you're getting walled out for so long, you're going to have that instinct of just like, I want to put pressure on. I want to like put pressure on it. But it's just a matter of like, against New Balance, it's so punishing that you need to be able to find your moment to really exploit it. And it's just
Aaron never gave that moment for Erik. Like, there was never a moment where it felt like Erik was putting so much pressure that Aaron was like threatened.
Yeah, and Erik tried to create that for himself on that turn 1. And it's just Aaron had enough resources at that point that he was able to deal with it. I think that for if they play in later, right, that what Erik needs to do as an adjustment, right, is one, either like play the stalemate a bit better in that game. Like having the Flutter Mane there was fine because it was doing that immediate damage. It was threatening, but you need to get more value out of the Amoonguss. Or two, what you need to do is you need to create situations for Chiyu to go off. You can't just try to like force it immediately. You need to be doing something to burn resources and make it so that the Chiyu has an opportune time to, instead of just being like, I think on that turn 1, Erik wasn't going for a read, he was kind of going for a hope. He was hoping that like the Drain Punch wouldn't happen because he could threaten the Terra, and just kind of click the simple buttons.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see like how difficult that was for Erik, even though again like Aaron had so much less protects. Erik had the ability to like be weaving in and out protects and maybe like be able to play a little bit more defensively, and yet Aaron was the one that was able to play more defensively and like constantly like not be punished for it.
Aaron picked his spot so well. Like, I don't think Aaron got a switch punished that entire
No, I don't think so either.
And that's for someone who was like pretty constantly going from Amoonguss switches to Gyarados, Gyarados switches to Amoonguss to Iron Hands, and just constantly switching that. And just the ability to avoid getting punished and understanding what Erik's trying to accomplish at every point is really impressive. He just like outplayed in those micro situations, and that just kind of like accumulated and snowballed for a win.
I am kind of surprised that Erik did not bring Flutter Mane game 2, because like that Flutter Mane, at least what it did is it forced the Terra out of like the Iron Hand, which is pretty massive when you think about it.
Yeah, like the fact that that Terra was forced on turn 1 at game 1, like game 1 was significantly closer than game 2, right? Because the Gyarados was constantly favored in that Gyarados Iron Hands interaction. Once the Chiyu went down, nothing was favored against that Iron Hands.
Well, Erik had no pressure. That's the thing. All of his Pokemon were so passive. Like, sure, the Gyarados can waterfall, but if the Iron Hands doesn't Terra, it's doing what, 30% at best, maybe 35. So it's like gonna take a lot of waterfalls to get that knockout, and Amoonguss can just heal all it back up. And
yeah, it's
the pressure just wasn't there for Erik. There was no pressure going on after that Chew went down.
Yeah.
That was the Pokemon that he needed to survive the most.
And like Erik was trying. He was
Yeah.
trying to punish switches. He just wasn't able to find the right moment. And it's just like it's so hard because it's like how are you gonna thread the needle and find the one turn out of 10 to? And it's just like he wasn't creating a situation where like he could like punish something eventually, but it just wasn't in his favor. And it's just like Aaron created the favorable situation.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting that those Munguses got, I think, only one para the entire game, and it was like 10, 15 turns, and neither no pairs whatsoever, which is wow, that's kind of crazy when you think about it.
I know, and that's what Erik was relying on. I think like that's why the game looks like Erik couldn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
But regardless, congratulations to Aaron, and I think we still have a couple of more games this round, but only a few.
Yep.
While that was a 2-0, it's also New Balance.
Yeah, it did take a long. It did feel like I was watching the Garganacl mirror match or Dondozo mirror or something like that.
Salcure.
Yeah, Salcure, Wave Crash, so on and so forth.
I know we call it New Balance, but like. Is it really the balance if you're just kind of putting up the wall?
Yep. But that's going to be it for now. We're going to be back at well, I'm not going to be back, but
I'm gonna be.
Gavin will be here for round 2, and so stay tuned and thank you for watching it.